Welcome, and it's great to have you here for this guided meditation and Dharma talk. My name is Jonathan Foust, and I'm so grateful you've made the time to be here. Before we launch in, some acknowledgments, our traditional acknowledgments. First, to our producers, to Glenn Harrison and Leo Gimo for making this possible. Also would like to thank the Insight Meditation Community of Washington for hosting this, as well as a shout out to my friends at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Arlington, Virginia, which now hosts Monday Night Live once again. Big thank you to our mindful movement teacher, to Rita Moran, and to Ray Manioki, who offers mindful dialogue after this session, the whole Monday night experience at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. Join up with Rita, who will take you through some mindful movement. That'll glide you right into this meditation and talk, and afterward, time to connect with like-minded folks about the practice, about the talk, guided expertly by Ray Manioki. Those links are on my website and on my Facebook page. Also, a monthly newsletter. You can sign up. I offer a summary of talks, my best photography for the month. Got some good, amazing images this month, I must say. And finally, a thank you for your support. This is all offered freely in the spirit of generosity, so no one is denied access to these practices, these teachings, if they're so interested. And your support helps me make that happen. Alrighty. So, our topic for this evening is an antidote to the imposter syndrome. Before we launch into that, we're going to do a short meditation. And I'm looking forward to this topic. I have managed to fake my way into a lot of jobs and overextended myself. So this will be good. Alrighty, when you're ready, you can close your eyes. And you might let your body sway a little bit to the left and to the right. Find a place where you naturally come into balance, into a sense of alignment. Let your attention, as you close your eyes, move into the sense of the breath. Just notice where you feel the breath the most predominant. And for the next 3 breaths, just notice if you can feel, identify the location, and sense, if you can, not just the in-breath and the out-breath, but that moment of pause in between. This is a practice of gathering attention in the here and now. And it's this beautiful combination of effort and focus combined with a sense of relaxation and receptivity. So you might just sense what it's like to soften the muscles of your face, the muscles around your eyes. Softening the inside of the mouth. Feeling the weight of your shoulders, and you might imagine the weight of the arms and the weight of the shoulders, just gently drawing your shoulders down and away from your neck. Feel from the inside out, your palms. The space inside your thumbs. The space inside your fingers. You might relax and soften your belly. And noticing how the more you relax, the more you can feel. And for the next 3 breaths, how much more could you soften or let go on the breath moving out? Feel the length and the weight of your legs. Could you imagine feeling from the center of the bones And feeling now the soles of the feet and the heels. And from the crown of your head and down through the soles of the feet and the heels, what could relax or soften right now? What could let go right now? Bringing your attention now to an anchor or a focal point. Traditionally, it's the sense of the breath, but it might also be focused on the sounds, or maybe the palms. Just selecting one of these anchors, or if there's another anchor that you're called to. Notice how intimately you can feel right here at the point of contact. Any subtle movement, any subtle vibration. And sense, if you can, this very delicate blend of deep relaxation with alertness. This paradox of being receptive and at the same time concentrated. Naturally, you'll notice the mind secreting thoughts. And you might sense if it's possible to sense or just intuit what some call taking the seat of the witness. Who you are as the observer of what changes. Aware, awake, and letting be. As many times as your mind may come in with commentary, comparing, judging, planning, reviewing, that many times you can elect to let it go, to re-arrive inside, to soften, to relax, and to again feel this point of contact with your anchor. One element of meditation practice is this conscious re-arriving, the conscious refocusing of attention. Another element is this practice of being the open monitor, being the observer of change. And you may explore over the next few minutes, moving your attention from a tight focus on your anchor to a widening and a broadening of acknowledging everything that's changing and letting it be. And when you wake up with the mind far away, again, call your attention back. Re-arrive, soften, relax. And from your point of contact with your anchor, again, widen, broaden, open. What could relax or soften inside right now? And what could relax or soften even more? How intimately can you feel this point of contact with your anchor from the inside? Breath or sound or the felt sense in the palms? And can you sense just for a moment who you are as the witness, the observer, awake to what's changing? And you might explore now in the remaining minute or so, transitioning from any practice of doing to an inquiry into what it means to simply rest in presence, dropping any tight control of your anchor. Notice what could relax or soften or let go, and notice if it's possible at the same time to be awake to awareness itself, allowing everything to be as it is. And you might very gently, again, contact the breath and let the breath be full and deep. Notice how intimately you can feel the breath on the inside. And sense anything that may have shifted over this last 15 minutes. Quality of presence, quality of relaxation. You might let your head drift a little bit to the left and the right, and take some time to stretch and move or shift your body in any way that feels good. must have been around 8 or 9 years old when the Peace Corps was founded. And in my Quaker meeting, where I was raised, one of the early volunteers came to our Quaker meeting. He was a member of our meeting, and he gave a presentation about the service he did in, I believe it was in East Africa. There was something about not only his presentation, but how he was received by the Quaker meeting. It was kind of the equivalent of someone coming back from the war. It looked really cool, looked really noble what he was doing. It also looked like it was had a lot of growth, and I just thought to myself, I'm going to do that. Not only from the 9-year-old sense of like being the returning hero, but also the fact that it was doing good in the world. So I kind of filed that away, and when I was in college, while I was working on my degree, I was also co-managing about 1,000-acre farm and managing the livestock operation, kind of about 500 hogs. Can't believe now that I was a livestock manager, but at one point I noticed there was a Peace Corps recruiter at the college, and I thought, well, let me check in. And I said, listen, I'm going to have my master's in a year. What kind of possibilities might there be for me next year? And the guy said, we're pretty full up on teachers. Is there anything else that you've done? I said, well, I'm managing this 500 hog operation. And he said, oh my gosh, well, wow, we could really use that. I thought, wow, that's interesting. So kind of filed that away. And after I got my degree, I taught for a year in New Mexico in a high school. And when there was a downsizing, and it was clear that last hired, first fired, I went back and I went to the recruitment office in Albuquerque. And I went and I said, hey, I have this experience as a livestock manager. And the guy said, well, we're kind of full up on that. Have you done anything else? I said, well, I have my master's and degree in English. And he goes, oh, wow, that's what we need. And he said, could you teach phonetics? I said, sure. So I got a position at the University of Niamey in Niamey, Niger, in l'École des Lettres, teaching phonetics. Now, when I said I could teach phonetics, I was being rather hopeful that I could teach phonetics. I took a course in the history of English language, and I learned how to spell my name in the phonetic alphabet, but that was pretty much it. And when I got in country, it was revealed to me that not only would I be teaching phonetics in the university, I would be teaching graduate level phonetics with much older students. These are teachers who have been teaching for years, and every couple of years they get to come back and do more study. So many of my students are going to be much older than me. Most of them spoke at least 5 languages and had a very sophisticated approach to language. I was stepping into something called imposter syndrome. And that is the topic of this exploration. What is the antidote to imposter syndrome? I was in over my head. In one of the classes, one of the students said, Mr. Foust, could you explain the difference between a voiced and unvoiced interdental fricative? To which I said, that is an excellent question, but I don't want to get ahead of where we are in the class. So we will cover that in due time. I would go back to my office, I would look up what the heck an unvoiced interdental fricative was, and then be able to present it. By the way, a voiced and unvoiced interdental fricative is the difference between the and thing. So your tongue, interdental, and the fricative part. I shared this story before, and someone commented, what a stunning story of white male privilege. To which I have to say, absolutely. It was just assumed I could do it. And I said yes, and there I was, thrust in over my head. But nonetheless, there I was, totally over my head. And I have to say, I really learned about phonetics and how to teach phonetics because I had to. But what I would like to talk about is when it comes to this feeling of imposter syndrome, that is to say, where you don't feel qualified for whatever position you're in, wherever you are. First, I'd like to talk about the power of being onto yourself. Like once you're aware of it, things begin to shift. Second thing I'd like to talk about is what it means to think outside the box of your fear and your doubt. The third part of that is that shift from being lost in your own personal hallucination to getting on board with reality. And fourth, I'd like to talk about what it means to live from authenticity. In ancient Greek plays, when they put on a play, they wore masks. And the masks were made of linen or sometimes in terracotta. They kind of had exaggerated expressions. Some masks were like half the face, some were 3/4, some were a helmet, some were full face. But it allowed the actors to play multiple characters. So they would put on the mask and become that persona. And I find that to be just a really wonderful metaphor because we wear different masks all the time. You're a son or a daughter, a father or a mother, a sibling, a provider, a creator, a spiritual warrior. And what happens is, with all the different masks that you wear, sometimes we get attached to the mask and we forget who we are behind the persona, I mean to say. So can you think of a time when you were attached to what you were presenting to the world, to your mask, and maybe extended out a little bit further over your skis and was comfortable? And what I find is with imposter syndrome, we tend to think of like imposter syndrome as bad, but I really feel there's this balance of reaching and challenging ourselves, and then overreaching and the insecurity that comes with that. We take on some mask. For in this case, I was taking on the mask of being a phonetics professor, but I wasn't so sure I was up for it. Imposter syndrome is quite common. And as the teacher Werner Erhard said, 5 billion people thinking they're unique is not unique. One of the first antidotes to imposter syndrome is to recognize it. That it's such a common phenomena where we doubt our accomplishments and we fear that we're going to be exposed as a fraud. As soon as we begin to acknowledge our feelings of self-doubt, and as soon as we begin to understand that a lot of successful people experience imposter syndrome, either at some point in their lives or even currently, something begins to shift. Because mindfulness is all about self-awareness and recognizing patterns. The classic patterns we talk about are referred to as the 5 hindrances or the 5 obscurations. That is when your mind is filled with aversion, when you are caught in anger, judgment, blame, ill will. It's impossible to be fully present in the moment. The second is craving. It's the wanting mind. When you are fantasizing, planning, again, impossible to be present. The third has to do with the worried mind, the restless mind, the hypervigilant mind. It just can't settle because it's scanning for danger, it's scanning for what's next. The fourth is sloth and torpor. It's the numbing out. It's the kind of the heaviness. It's the sort of spiraling down into depression quality of mind. So aversion, craving, restlessness, that's almost too much energy, and the other, sloth and torpor, not enough energy, leave us with the fifth, of these mind states, which is doubt. So imposter syndrome is not so unique. But if we don't look closely at how we live or how we don't live, then we're just, as Thoreau said, doomed to live lives of quiet desperation. We're trapped inside the box of the mind. And the question becomes, how do you get outside the box? How do you move from this sense of the attached to the false persona, attached to the mask, to a sense of real authenticity? Whenever you take on anything new, we're just plagued with doubt. Over time, we kind of mature into it. I'd like to talk a little bit about that. An example of a young umpire and an old umpire in baseball. The young umpire is asked, well, tell me what a strike is. And the young umpire says, well, it's when the ball is kind of between the knees and the chest and from the shoulders, from one shoulder to another. The old umpire, when he's asked, what's a strike? He says, it's a strike when I say it's a strike. You can sense the difference there. One needs to justify themselves, and one has just arrived. When you find yourself with any sense of imposter syndrome, or we can even translate this into caught in the hindrance of doubt, it's very helpful to turn and investigate and to see the patterns. If you find yourself at times caught in perfectionism, a feeling like what you're doing just isn't enough and a little bit more is going to put it over the top, that may be a sign. A sense of the mind catastrophizing. Once they find out who I am, it's all over. Setting unrealistic standards, comparing yourself to someone who's been around for a long time. If you find your mind focusing on what's not working and discounting positive feedback, those are signs of being caught in paralyzing doubt. If you find yourself procrastinating because you're not wanting to take risks, you're not wanting to be exposed, that's a pretty good sign. We live most of our lives conforming, driven by the need to fit in. And at some point in our lives, a question begins to emerge. And that question is something like this: whose life am I living anyway? Am I just living the programming set in place by my parents and by my culture? How much am I driven by fear? The fear of failure, the fear of loss, the fear of shame. How much of my life is driven by the need to be successful, by the need to win, by the need for praise? Those questions are really powerful because what they start to do is they begin to deconstruct all of that conditioning and to begin to point the way, and only point the way, because there's a lot of work to do there, toward what it means to be authentic, what it means to be true to yourself. The poet Dana Falls offers these words in this poem called Choosing Life. The downward spiral starts. Self-doubt and darkness vie for center stage, while I, the passive drowning one, waiting for my demise. Just as I sink beneath the waves, a thought arises. Why go there? I've made this trip 1,000 times and it leads nowhere. I am choosing life. And the darkness lifts just a little. I'm choosing life. The downward spiral slows, then stops. I'm lifted up and buoyant now, not shrinking from the truth. Okay, I'm not perfect, and reality certainly doesn't look like what I choose. And maybe that's the only point, to ride the spirals down and up and make the choice for life. Being caught in that false persona, in the fear of being exposed, the fear of not enough, it's a hell realm. It's a bardo. What is it that triggers the feelings of being an imposter? It has a lot to do with our conditioning, the beliefs that we just absorb. I've often asked this question, just to complete the following phrase. One thing my parents always said about money was, what did your parents always say about money? And how much does what they said about money affect your relationship to money? How many beliefs have you taken on for reality? How many beliefs are this lens that you're actually looking through? And it opens up this question. With all of the conditioning that forms your point of view, who are you in the absence of that conditioning? So part of waking up inside this sense of being an imposter and plagued with doubt is to explore how to reframe it, how to kind of change the frame. It's helpful to kind of challenge the negative self-talk and really look at it closely. It's helpful to focus on your strengths, the value you bring, and remember that making mistakes is part of growing. And as I was trying to justify my life as a 22-year-old professor of phonetics, I would have to remind myself that I can do this. One day at a time, I can do this. I also remembered that how much I love learning, how much I love mastering new things, and actually embracing what a fast track of learning this was. Yes, I was scrambling and lost my first year, but I learned a lot. I also realized how much I love to learn. At that time when I was living in Niger, I was learning French. I was learning how to take this information about phonetics and really explore how I could communicate the really important stuff. The person before me, I had about 3 days with her before I took over, was way academic. She was really focused on kind of the abstract qualities of phonetics and linguistics. And as I tuned into what the teachers really needed, what they really needed was to really learn correct pronunciation, to learn how to master the phonetic alphabet so that they could help their students in teaching them English. I also drew on my desire for making the class alive and fun. So making it pragmatic, also making it as much fun as possible. I would often talk about some of the different accents, because there's received pronunciation, from Great Britain and Standard American, but then all the other accents. And kind of the classic one is the phrase, I was walking down 33rd and 3rd, and I saw a dirty bird. So with phonetic transcription, with received pronunciation, I was walking down 33rd and 3rd, and I saw a dirty bird. Standard American, I was walking down 33rd and 3rd, and I saw a dirty bird. Ghanaian is I was walking down 33rd and 3rd, and I saw Dete Bed. And then, of course, I had to throw in the Bronx, Brooklyn. I was walking down Toity Toyd and Toyd, and I saw Doity Boyd. I remember when I shared that with them, just the groans and the laughter and the sense of utter overwhelm. So by focusing on what I could do, focusing on my love of learning, my focus on making it relevant and being of service, it helped me move through my own doubt. And it really brings to mind the kind of the classic Buddhist psychology approach to the antidote to doubt. When you are in doubt, you question everything. The antidote to doubt is faith. Now, when I hear the word faith, I kind of recoil because I think of faith as just believing something's true. And there is a spectrum of faith. One element of faith is kind of the innocent faith, the magical thinking faith. If I think happy thoughts, everything will be fine. That may be helpful for some people, just kind of blind faith. But the kind of faith that we're looking at here is what we could call mature faith, or also known as verified faith. So what this includes is looking closely at reality, investigation into the nature of reality itself. So part of it is around really looking closely. What actually is true? What do I know to be true? Sometimes this can reveal beliefs that are simply false. The belief that I can't do this, that I'm not enough, I'm not lovable, I'm not good enough. Take a good hard look at those beliefs. Something may be on the other side that opens up all kinds of new possibilities. Faith has to do with kind of faith in the path, whatever your path may be. And if your path is about becoming more awake, cultivating more compassion, being of service, it helps to reframe that sense of who you are as a growing being. And faith is also an exploration of faith in your intent, the desire to learn, the desire to grow, the desire to be of service. This reframing is so powerful. And what I find are these questions. Now, when I'm stuck or when I'm caught, the first question, how can this serve awakening? What am I learning? What is the opportunity here? One of the advantages of having a reality-based practice is it really opens us up to being truthful. Mark Twain said that one great thing about telling the truth is you never have to remember what you said. I love that. Usually when we are uncomfortable, we just bear the discomfort. And unless we turn toward it and really look closely, it just gets more and more chronic. I had an experience many, many years ago. I've shared this before, where I was in a lot of group meetings. I was like the junior person in the meetings, and I was sitting on my hands a lot, and not sharing, feeling agitation, feeling frustration, feeling like I had something to say, but being conscious of my age and kind of holding back. Finally, I would say it became unbearable. And as I was meditating on that feeling of discomfort, I could really look closely at kind of what you call the karma or the outcome of it. If I do nothing, what's this going to be like? And extremely unpleasant. And then a thought popped into my head. And the thought was, I'm just going to be me until I'm fired. Something kind of shifted for me, and I started speaking up. And rather than being fired, there was kind of a welcome back. But that only came when I really focused on the intense discomfort. So recognizing the state, recognizing what's between you and feeling free is so integral. The courage to turn toward that paralyzing feeling inside can open up new possibilities. But it's important to remember that imposter syndrome, it has been said by some, is not really a syndrome. It's actually just being human. There's no one that doesn't experience that sense of the false, presenting a false persona. I'm not sure that's totally true. Now that I think of that, there was a guy on the board of directors when I was head of an organization, and I said to the chair of the board, I said, "Wow, that guy is so confident." And my friend who'd been on a lot of boards said, "Have you noticed how confident he is when he's right?" I said, "Absolutely." He said, "And have you noticed how he's equally confident when he's wrong?" But yeah, that's true. So maybe not everyone feels it, but I think most people feel that insecurity and the stagnation that comes, the paralysis that comes. Quite a few years ago, I was invited to do an audio program, a 6-hour audio program for Sounds True on body-centered inquiry. An incredible opportunity, and I immediately said, yes, I'd love to do it. And I found myself paralyzed. I found myself just stagnant. I couldn't get over some creative block. Finally, after a fair bit of discomfort and feeling the time pressure begin to build, I finally took a closer look at it. And I realized I had this fear. I was going to be presenting something to the world, and all these great content experts, people with more initials after their name than me, were going to see everything, and I would be exposed. And they could tear it down. And they could expose me for the superficial fraud that I really am. Recognizing that fear was so helpful. Because as I just sat with it, this thought just sort of popped in that changed everything. And this is the thought. If this program helps one person, it's absolutely worth it. That tapped me into my sincere desire to offer something that would be of help. And I began to write the program for that one person for whom it would absolutely be worth it. So helpful. So helpful. When we can begin to recognize that we are not alone, particularly not alone with our self-doubt, not alone in that sense of being caught in a persona and trying to live up to the mask, it begins to shift things. And if you think about it, if you just think of someone now who has a lot of power, a lot of prestige, what if not now, sometime in the past, they were overwhelmed with imposter syndrome? And it's true. When you look really closely at people who've got a lot of charisma, a lot of coalesced power, authority, and influence, many times they too worked with this sense of feeling an imposter, feeling like they were going to be exposed for the fraud that they really are. So one of the greatest antidotes has to do with connecting with others. When you realize that you're not alone and you can begin to talk about it with trusted friends or with mentors or colleagues about it. What you can't communicate controls you. And you may find as you talk with others about their perspective, get their reassurance, listen to the struggles that they're going through, it will make a big, big difference. One thing I really enjoy for those who teach, kind of like I do, is to kind of name the inflation-deflation process. It's one thing Tara and I talk about is we get some positive feedback and the inflation is so wonderful. And then the doubts come in and absolute deflation. For me, and I think for many of us, one way to kind of move beyond the doubt is to think about the people you can help. That however you are, whatever mask that you are behind, however you're serving, when you reflect on the contribution you might make, that can help you to contact the sincerity. And for me, it's the why. Why are you doing what you're doing? Very, very helpful inquiry. The other thing to help you move beyond is to recognize that the higher the risk, the higher the potential reward. And it's the willingness to take risks that opens up our growth. It makes us feel more alive. So one can say that we are in a constant process of moving into a greater sense of self-awareness and a greater sense of authenticity. As someone said, no one got enlightened by adding anything. It's only in the removal of our conditioning that we begin to see into our true nature. And I'm always reminded of the number one regret of the dying. This is observed by someone who sat with thousands of people at the end of their life. The number one regret of the dying, I was not true to myself. And when we begin to address what it means to be true to ourselves, it opens up a deeper sense of authenticity. And it may mean that the mask that you are behind, the role that you're playing, the act that you have, it may be that no longer resonates for you, or it may be that you can inhabit it from a place of deep presence and a deep, deep authenticity. One of my heroes is the author Malcolm Gladwell. He's written so many books that and short pieces that have been so helpful. He's such an amazing writer. And he talked about his father. And he said one of the things that frustrated about his father was his father would always ask questions. And his father would often ask what he thought were really stupid questions. And later he began to deeply admire that trait in his father. His father was never afraid to say, I don't understand. Could you explain that to me? He was utterly guileless around owning up to what he didn't understand, to owning up what he didn't know. And I think this is really key to living a more authentic life. My teacher, back in my ashram days, who was an incredibly charismatic guy, said this. I've always remembered this. He said, people are attracted to me not for what I know, but for how comfortable I am with what I don't know. When I heard that, I thought, man, I want to embrace that. I want to be really comfortable with what I don't know. And this speaks to what's often referred to as beginner's mind, which is really articulated beautifully by Suzuki, the teacher Shunryu Suzuki. He said that in the expert's mind, there are very few possibilities. In the beginner's mind, there are infinite possibilities. So this becomes a very refreshing way to practice, and we'll close our this talk with a little meditation on beginner's mind. But could you imagine coming back again and again to this sense of beginner's mind, not having to be an expert, to get comfortable with what you don't know? In my training as a Dharma teacher and helping to train other people as Dharma teachers, someone once asked this question to one of the senior Vipassana teachers. They said, people come to us with lots of really deep, complex questions and issues. And what do I do when I get a question that completely befuddles me? And the teacher's response was this. He said, you simply say this: I don't know the answer to that, but I can try to find out and we can talk more. I don't know the answer to that. What a relief. What a relief. So if we think of living an authentic life as the antidote to imposter syndrome, it has a couple characteristics. One of them is to embrace continuous learning, to be a learner still learning life's lessons. To remember that expertise is developed over time, and that a growth mindset, one that's focused on the passion of learning, is a very, very helpful tool. And to seek feedback, to continue to explore how you can learn, how you can continue to grow. Here's a little statement about what it means to be a learner. This is from David Cooper. Most people think enlightenment as a kind of magical attainment, a state of being close to perfection. At this level, one can perform amazing feats, see past and future lives, and tune into the inner workings of the universe. This may be possible for a number of special beings, but for most of us, enlightenment is much more in line with what Suzuki describes. It means having a quality of beginningness, a fresh, simple, unsophisticated view of things. To have beginner's mind in how we approach things is a major teaching. In many ways, the process of enlightenment is clearing away the thoughts, beliefs, and ideas that cloud our ability to see things as they really are in their pristine form. So, imposter syndrome is real. And except for a couple of sociopaths, everyone feels like a fraud at times. When you recognize the possibility that you can just simply name it and investigate it, that you're not alone, that you can take refuge with others, you can begin to explore what's underneath it. You begin to recognize the fundamental seed of doubt and to look really closely. What does it mean to have faith in your path, to have faith in yourself? To remember the why you're doing what you're doing. To think of those that you can support, those that you can be of service to. To call on compassion. To remember why you're here. Why this is enlivening for you. To remember how to be comfortable with what you don't know. Let's close our eyes. We'll take just a few minutes. You might just feel the breath right now. Just notice where you feel the breath. And for the next few rounds of breath, you might imagine that you're experiencing the breath for the first time. Can you sense the innocence of discovery of what breath feels like? And can you sense what it might be like to be more comfortable with what you don't know? To flame the coals of your passion for learning, for being awake, for being a contribution to others. And you might explore either if there's a time now when you feel that sense of being an imposter, of being exposed for what you don't know, or another time in the past. You might take a moment just to look through the lens of seeing it clearly. What it feels like inside when you are trapped and caught in doubt. The thoughts and beliefs that are generated from that state of being small. And you might just sense through the lens of compassion, kindness, and empathy. If you were to hold this in some kind of loving presence, how does it move? How does it shift? How does it change? What you feel, others feel. And can you sense behind all of this yearning to be awake, this desire to be a wholesome contributor, to live your life from a place of overflow. And can you sense, as you embrace a sense of beginner's mind, this field of infinite possibility? As you're ready, you can deepen your breath. If you like, you can open your eyes. I hope you found this helpful. Recognizing the patterns of this small self that keeps us trapped, so key. And the power of investigation to look really closely at the underpinnings, to look at what's true, can allow you, no matter where you are, to feel more alive, more awake, and more vibrant. Whatever masks you're wearing, I hope you enjoy them to the fullest. Thank you so much for your time and attention.